Hey everyone, welcome back to the workshop. Artisan Pirate here, and in today's fun scroll saw project video, have a nice piece of compound cut word art designed by Steve Good, and I think it's going to be a great project to celebrate the season that is fast approaching, and that is Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is fast approaching here in America on February 14th. Where we shower our loved ones, our significant others, our spouses with love and affection, and give them a nice box of chocolate candies, a nice bouquet of flowers, take them out to a nice meal, or take them out to a nice movie. And I feel that this project here, with its compact nature, once you get it cut out, would be a nice additional trinket to put in with the gifts that you give to your loved ones on Valentine's Day. Once again, it's a piece of compound cut word art designed by Steve Good. It's one of his older designs, and as you see, it's going to say "Love You." Indeed, that is the phrase you say on Valentine's Day, but also throughout the whole year. You always need to remind everyone how much they mean to you and how much you love them. But you see it says love on one side, you will flip it and it'll say "Love You," so it's going to have a nice visual to it. And Steve Good has very clear instructions here on how to mill down the material. It says you need a blank that is 1.5 by 1.5 by 4 inches, so that's going to be a very small blank to cut out over on the scroll saw. And with some compound cuts, they can be so small that it can be a little bit tedious to hold them while you are doing the scroll saw work, and you can do one of two routes when you are doing compound cutting to get a better grip on your projects. You can, one, make a compound cutting jig like I have here. My buddy Robert up in New York made this one for me, and I've used it in a previous YouTube video, and some subscribers told me in that video if you didn't want to make a compound cut jig like this, you could of course just take two small C-clamps and clamp it directly to your blank you are cutting, and that would also give you some better grip over on the scroll saw without it scratching or marring up the scroll saw table's work surface. Or you could go the route that I'm going to be going in today's video. Again, with it being just 4 inches long, what I'm going to do when we get over to the table saw is just mill the material down a little bit longer. That way, for me personally, I can get a better grip on it over at the scroll saw. So it's really, really cool. Nice big bold font there that says "Love You." And for the material I'm going to be using in today's video, it's just going to be a scrap piece of pine that I got out of the scrap bin. Of course you could use exotic or hardwoods, but I love using pine because it is a good material to teach with, and it takes stain, it takes paint, it takes splashes of color very well, and it finishes up nicely in my opinion. So we will finish milling this down to the proper dimensions over on the table saw. And speaking of milling down and cutting everything, I hope it goes without saying that for compound cutting you need to of course make sure that your table saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees when you are milling down your blank to the proper dimensions. And then once you get over to the scroll saw, you need to of course make sure that your scroll saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees. So before we even do our first cut, I'll double check and make sure the scroll saw is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees with my 3D printed blade alignment jigs. And what I need to do now so we can get this Valentine's Day project started is move over to the workbench and trim our pattern out so we can get it ready to attach to the blank, and also finish milling this blank down to its proper dimensions. Let's move the camera and do that now. And over here on the workbench we will take a straight edge and the X-Acto knife and trim out the pattern completely, and then we will fold it completely in half and get a nice crisp edge along that fold line. And we will take the pattern over to the Rikon table saw and dial in our measurements here. I like using the pattern like this whenever possible. And then we will mill down our scrap piece of pine to its final dimensions of 1.5 inch square block, and then I will roughly cut it to its final dimensions. Again, I'm going to leave it a little bit bigger to get a good handhold over at the scroll saw. But now we will attach the pattern with some basic clear packing tape. Clear packing tape is all I will use for this project, and it helps lubricate the scroll saw blade to reduce burn marks while scrolling. But after the pattern is firmly attached, we will step over to the drill press, and I will use a larger than normal drill bit to drill out all of the pilot holes for internal cutting. And I'm using a larger drill bit because you do not want a small drill bit to drift within the material while drilling out the pilot holes for internal cutting. But not very many internal cuts on this project to make up the "Love You" words. Once the pilot holes are drilled out, we will step over to the scroll saw, and before we do our first cut, we will double check with our 3D printed blade alignment jig to make sure everything is dialed in at a perfect 90 degrees. And then we will be ready to thread through the first pilot hole and begin scrolling. For all of the scrolling on this project, I'll be using a number 5 Ultra reverse tooth blade, and it will cut through the 1.5 inch thick piece of pine exceptionally well with minimal chip out. But please keep in mind, due to the nature of the thickness of the material, it is an extremely slow cut. Of course, I do have the video footage sped up here, but I am taking my time and letting the blade do the work. If you guys would like to try this pattern, it's available as a free pattern download over at Steve Good's scrollsawworkshop.blogspot.com website over in his free pattern catalog. Again, it's a very slow cut. It took me around 30 to 35 minutes to do all of the internal cutting on today's project. I just had on some good music, and I had the heaters keeping me nice and warm during these winter months. But we will soon be switching to a close-up view to hopefully give you guys a better perspective of everything. Again, this is a project I have made in the past and documented it on social media, but I felt like doing a video would really show the process from start to finish. Here we are doing the final internal cut on this side around the E in love, and then we can flip the project and begin scrolling out the other side. But please keep in mind, due to the nature of compound cutting and because you removed material on the other side, the cutting process on this side will be a lot quicker, but the scroll saw blade will have a tendency to want to grab in that negative space, and it can potentially jerk in your hand. So keep a good firm grip on the project throughout the whole scrolling process. If you guys like what you're seeing, I would highly encourage you to subscribe to my channel and also follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. I'd really appreciate the support. Once again, taking my time and letting the blade do the work and being as loyal as I possibly can be to the cut line. And I just feel like this project would be a good handmade gift to make for a loved one or a significant other. Doing the final internal cut here. I used that number 5 Ultra reverse tooth blade for the whole scroll saw process. But now we will retension the blade and flush cut the two ends to cut the project down to its final size. And then all of the scroll saw work will be done. And now we will step back over to the workbench and take the same X-Acto knife that we used to cut out the pattern and use it to cut away the pattern and reveal the completed project. But now it is time for sanding, and we will step over to the belt sander and quickly flush sand all of the areas smooth. The scroll saw blades I used cut very smoothly and didn't have a lot of chip out, which is always good when it comes time for sanding. But then I opted to add a splash of color with a light Minwax wood stain, and I wiped off the excess with some paper towels here and hung it on a hook to dry. And then when it was dry to the touch, I took it to the shop door and gave it several coats of Rust-Oleum clear gloss for a finish. And when that dried, our beautiful piece of 3D compound cut word art was complete. Thank you all for watching. And here we have the completed compound cut Love You word art piece cut out completely over on the scroll saw using the compound cutting technique, and it finished up beautifully, nice and crisp with the big bold Love You font encapsulated in this 4-inch block of material. Thank you, Steve Good, for another fantastic design from your pattern catalog. Once again, it's one of his older pattern offerings, so you guys might have to go and search for it in the pattern catalog if you guys would like to try it out in your garage or workshops. It took me around 30 minutes to scroll the project out completely from start to finish. I'm so versed in compound cutting and how to do it over on the scroll saw that it doesn't take very long at all. But of course, if you guys would want to try this project, take your time and let the blade do the work and be as loyal as you possibly can be to the cut line to where everything will come out nice and crisp like the one has in today's video. Really happy with how it came out. I cut this out of a scrap piece of pine. I believe it was an offcut of a 2x4 that was over in the scrap bin, and you guys seen me mill it and prep it over on the table saw before we finished prepping it to get it over to the scroll saw to begin the scroll saw process. And again, with it being pine, it was a very soft cut. It was a very smooth cut for me. You could of course cut this out of exotic or hardwoods if you wanted to, but because of the different densities of those types of material, it might take you a little bit longer to cut it out over on the scroll saw. Hopefully that makes sense because you're scrolling through an 1.5 inch piece of material. So of course let the blade do the work. And for today's video, I used a very thin number 5 ultra reverse tooth blade, the standard blade that I use for 99% of my scroll saw work, because I was using pine. If I was using a more exotic wood, I might have had to went up to a number 10 or 12 blade to cut this project out, but the number 5 blade done a fantastic job in today's project. And with compound cutting, I always tell people to keep a firm grip on your material, because once you start removing piece from one side of it and then you flip the scroll saw project, the blade is going to float through what I call negative space, and it will have a tendency to want to jump and grab once you get to that other side, and it's cutting through all of that open air while you're working on the other side of the material. So of course keep a firm grip on your project. And again, as I said at the beginning of the video, if you guys are uncomfortable holding something this small over on the scroll saw, you could of course make a compound cutting jig like my buddy Robert made for me, to where it would give you a better and firmer grip over at the scroll saw. Or you could do like I done in today's video, and I just extended the blank. You can do that with some compound cutting projects to again give you a better handhold on the project while you are scrolling it out. And I finished this with a light Minwax wood stain and Rust-Oleum clear gloss. I really love that lighter shade of Minwax wood stain I use. I believe it's called Golden Pecan, because it doesn't mask away the natural grains and textures of the lighter shades of material I like to use, and allows those to shine through. And then of course the Rust-Oleum clear gloss give it that nice glossy appearance for a finish. And of course in my mind's eye, I have interpreted this to be a Valentine's Day project for you guys to quickly make out in your garage or workshops and give a nice heartfelt handmade gift to your loved one or significant other or spouse. You know, it goes a long way when you make something handmade. And of course, with the iconic quote of "Love You," this could also be given out any day of the year, for Christmas, for a birthday, for an anniversary, you know, for date night or things like that. Again, handmade gifts are very heartfelt, and they go a long way just to show how much you love an individual person. And because of the small nature of this project, it could of course be placed on a shelf, desk, or countertop and not take up that much space. And then when people pick it up and start looking at it from every different angle and start asking you, hey, how was that project made, you can tell them that it was made completely 100% over on a scroll saw, once again showing off the scroll saw's versatility for creative and beautiful designs. I also feel that if you didn't want to use exotic or hardwoods and you wanted to use pine like I have in today's video, you could go in and paint the individual words of love and you, and then paint the box bracket, as I like to call it, a different color for a nice visual. Or if you're very good with epoxy and resin, you could go in here, cut the material out of a piece of lighter shade like I have done here, like pine, that's a lighter shade of material, and go in here and put maybe some red or pink resin in it to represent Valentine's Day. So a lot of options and versatility with each and every scroll saw woodworking project you come across. But I was very happy to come out here on this cold day in Burlington, North Carolina and make this project for you guys. It's a project that I've made several times in in the past and documented over on social media, but hopefully I've shown you and encouraged you in today's video how easy it is to make a project like this out in your garage or workshops, and hopefully in some way, shape, or form you guys picked up a tip or tidbit along the way. But very happy with how it came out, and I hope you guys are happy with the project as well. That's about all for this one. If you're new to the channel, hopefully you'll click that subscribe button and follow me across all my social media feeds under the Artisan Pirate name. As always, links to contact me as well as all my social media feeds will always be linked down in the description box below these videos. That's about all for this one, and remember guys, if I can make it or do it, so can you. I'm the Artisan Pirate. Take care, and I'll see you guys real soon.